Guys are doing this today. They're like, oh, no, she wouldn't do that. She would never do that. Yes, she would. Yes, she would. She deceived him to get it. She used it against him. And then he did it again. But someday you will be old enough to start reading fairy tales again. C.S. Lewis. Excellent bit of wisdom there. Hi, welcome back to Far From Eden. On Sundays, we do literary archaeology. We continue with our series on Grimm fairy tales. And the thing we all need to understand is that we are shaped by the stories we read and see, I suppose, in this day and age. Because where are the stories that most of us have seen? On a screen, movies, television, those are all stories. And what happens is there are archetypes in stories, right? The characters. And we like stories where we see ourselves. That's why the propaganda has been so successful in getting women to highly dislike men, to see them as threats. So much that they would choose a bear over a man in a forest, which is completely irrational. But that's how strong the propaganda has been, and that's how effective it is to tell people the stories that shape them in the way you want them to be shaped. But it's not just the stories they've been telling all of us in movies, television, even music. Each song is kind of a story to it. They stopped reading fairy tales at one point. These fairy tales teach men about witches and evil stepmothers and the importance of piety in a woman. So today's fairy tale is The Sparrow and His 4 Children. So I have no idea what it is. We always read these. Well, some of you guys might have heard it before, but I've never read it. So we'll see what we get into here. A sparrow had 4 young ones in a swallow's nest. When they were fledged, some bad boys broke up the nest, but fortunately, all the young birds escaped in a whirlwind. Then their father became sorry that his sons went off into the world before he was able to warn them about its many dangers or to give them good advice about how to fend for themselves. See what I mean about the value of these stories? Talking about a father's wisdom being passed on to his sons and all the things to teach them about the dangers of the world. It would be very different than how a woman teaches children about the dangers of the world. The woman basically usually teaches them to be afraid and avoid. The father generally teaches courage and how to face them. Let's see what the sparrow does. In the autumn, a great many sparrows came together in a wheat field. It was there that the father came upon his 4 sons once again. Aw. And he joyfully took them home with him. Ah, my dear sons, I was terribly concerned about you all summer. I was terribly concerned about you all summer, especially since you had been carried away by the wind before I could give you my advice. Now listen to my words. Obey your father and keep this in mind. Little birds must face grave dangers. Then he asked his oldest son where he had spent the summer and how he had fed himself. I lived in the garden and hunted caterpillars and little worms until the cherries turned ripe. Ah, my son, said the father, such tasty morsels are not bad, but it can be dangerous searching for them. So from now on, be on your guard, especially when people walk around the garden carrying long green poles that are hollow inside and have a hole on the top. Yes, father, said the son. And what should I do when a green leaf is stuck over the hole with wax? Where have you seen this? In a merchant's garden, the young bird said. Oh, my son, responded the father, merchants are wily people. If you have been among such worldly folk, you have learned enough of their shrewd ways. But see that you use all this shrewdness well and don't become overconfident. I am so interested to hear what you guys have to say about this tale because it's obviously for little boys. And I love that because nowadays little boys aren't supposed to be little boys. They're not supposed to, wrestle. They're supposed to sit quietly and listen like a little girl. I'm not saying they shouldn't have manners, but they just try to make boys into girls and say that is what is good behavior. Where boys, their instinct is to be climbing trees and learning, etc. So it's almost like I'm realizing it while I'm reading this, like, oh, this is actually acknowledging young boys and how to go forth. Notice that it's different. It's almost like men and women are different, and they used to know that. Rather than trying to make everyone the same, egalitarianism, which they just mean sameness. They don't mean equal value of people. It's not what they mean. Then he asked the next son, where did you set up your home? At court, said the son. Sparrows and silly little birds have no business being in such a place. There is too much gold, velvet and silk, armor and harnesses, sparrowhawks, screech owls, and falcons. Keep to the horse stables. Barry, he's in the chat every night, and he's a horse guy. I just scared my little dog when I laughed, and that reminds me to kindly ask you to hit the like button, please, especially for the fairy tales, because they're not as popular, obviously, but I think these fairy tales are so important. I really do. I think in fairy tales, masculinity is celebrated, and you don't see that nowadays, hardly anywhere. It's always maligned. Always. So we keep to the horse stables. Oh my goodness. I lost my spot. Keep to the horse stables where the oats are winnowed and threshed. Then you might be lucky enough to get your daily piece of bread and eat it in peace. Yes, father, said this son, but what shall I do if the stable boys make traps and set their gins and snares in the straw? Many a bird has gone away limp because of this. Where have you seen this? At the court, among the stable boys. Uh-oh. Oh, my son, those court servants are bad boys. If you have been at court and mixed with the lords and left no feathers behind, you have learned quite a bit and will know how to get by in the world. However, keep your eyes open all around you and above you, for often even the smartest dogs have felt the bite of wolves. The father now took his third son to account. Where did you try your luck? I cast my lot on the highways and county roads, and sometimes I manage to find a grain of wheat or barley. Indeed, this is a fine meal, said the father, but keep on the alert for signs of danger and look around carefully, especially when someone bends over and is about to pick up a stone. Then make sure you take off quickly. That's true, said the son. But what should I do when someone may already be carrying a rock or a stone from a walk under his shirt or in his pocket? Where have you seen this? Among the mines, dear father. When they return from work, they generally carry stones with them. Miners are workers and resourceful people. If you've been around mining boys, you've seen and learned something. Fly there if you will, but this you must know. Mining boys have killed many a sparrow. I mean, it's almost like there's dangers everywhere and you can't avoid it. And I had just said that women are the ones that generally are like this. Oh, that's scary. Don't go there. It's scary. Don't do this. Right? And it's a big problem with, women trying to raise boys into men. It's not possible. And that's actually no shade to those women. The shade lies where, like, don't get rid of the men. Like, don't, that's a reason not to divorce, because your children will be better off. Your sons and daughters need a father. It's just true. But if it's a marriage and she's, calling all the shots and saying, like, just because she's the female, like she's somehow better at raising the children, so she's going to make all their rules or non-rules. It's just gentle parenting. Like, okay, that's not parenting. So the father actually has to be allowed to be the father, Otherwise, you might as well just be in a single mother home. Okay. Finally, the father came to the youngest son. Oh, that's right there before. You, my dear little chatterbox, you were always the silliest and weakest. Stay with me. The world is filled with crass and wicked birds that have crooked beaks and long claws. Stick to your own kind and pick up little spiders and caterpillars from the trees or cottages. This way, you'll live long and be content. My dear father, he who feeds himself without causing harm to other people will go far, and no sparrow, hawk, falcon, eagle, or kite will do him harm if each morning and evening he faithfully commands himself and his honestly earned food to merciful God, who is the creator and preserver of all the birds of the forest and village. His eye is on the sparrow. Likewise, it is he who heats. Oh, sorry. It is he who hears the cries and prayers of the young ravens, for no sparrow or wren shall ever fall to the ground against his will. How lovely. Where have you learned this? The son answered, when the gust of wind tore me from you, I landed in a church. There I picked the flies and spiders from the windows and heard those words during a sermon. Then the father of all sparrows fed me during the summer and protected me from misfortune and fierce birds. So touching and moving. How wonderful. Faith, my dear one, if you take refuge in the churches and help clean out the spiders and the buzzing flies, and if you chirp to God like the young ravens and commend yourself to the eternal Creator, you will stay well, even if the entire world be full of wild and malicious birds. For he who worships God in every way, who suffers, waits, is meek, and prays, who keeps his faith and conscience pure, God will keep him safe and sure. And I would also add to that, obviously, bad things happen to good people. Bad things probably happen to good sparrows, right? But a life of service, because the sparrows are doing a service in the church. They're getting the bugs. I think that's really valuable. They're getting the bugs. And honestly, when I hear birds chirping, I think of that as, like they're worshiping their creator. I actually do, because I'm like, he didn't have to make it so birds sing. It's just one of those things that I'm like, how do you deny it? It's undeniable. Sometimes I get nervous when it's a show that I am talking about God that much, because I know that it turns a lot of people away. But it's the truth, and it's a truth that we need to hear. And even people like Elon Musk, who I was watching a bit of a conversation between him and Jordan Peterson earlier this morning, and Elon Musk was talking about all the benefits of a Christian society, all the values. He was even talking about turn the other cheek and forgiveness and how important that is, etc. Even though he's, probably an atheist himself, but he sees the value in it. And the problem is that you don't really have that you don't really hold those values in a society. It doesn't stick if there aren't actual people with the faith that it's true, right? So it can't be, a country of Elon Musks and Richard Dawkins that are just like, yeah, I would want to live in a Christian society. Like, that's better than not recognizing the truth, but I think it proves it. It just proves it that it is true, because of the difference it makes and the anomalies that don't have to happen, that are not evolution, like birds singing. And these birds the birds in the church had a life of service, and that's meaning. Passing away is not the worst thing that can happen to you. I know a lot of you guys know that, because you've been through stuff that is worse than that. Living a life without purpose and meaning, just absolutely feeling void inside, that's worse. The fourth sparrow, the youngest sparrow, he was, the fact that the wind blew him into a church, and he found that. And he recognized it. When he heard the sermon, he could have taken it or not. But he realized it to be true. His eye is on the sparrow. What a wonderful story to read as a child and as an adult. The next one is quite long. So what we're going to do is we're going to go out of order just a little bit so that we have our full show. And we've been doing a thing where if, the first one isn't so long, then we read the next one. So we're going to go ahead and skip to the tablecloth, the knapsack, the cannon hat, and the horn. Because why not? Because it's Grimm. So we have inanimate objects as characters. Rojas was good at explaining why there are inanimate objects and animals used. Because then when they're doing things that are considered sinful, and I'm sorry if I'm messing up this explanation, I'm paraphrasing. If they're doing things that are sinful, it's not because they're an animal or an inanimate object, and they need it to tell the story. Sorry, I'm having a situation with the book jacket. Oops. Okay. The tablecloth, the knapsack, the cannon hat, and the horn. Once there were 3 brothers from regions of the Black Mountains. Originally, they were very poor and traveled to Spain, where they came to a mountain completely surrounded by silver. The oldest brother took advantage of the situation by gathering as much silver as he could carry and went back home with his booty. The other 2 continued traveling and came to a mountain where nothing could be seen but gold. One brother said to the other, "What should we do?" The second took as much gold as he could carry, as his older brother had done, and went home. However, the third wanted to see if he could have even better luck and continued on his way. He walked for 3 days and then entered an enormous forest. After wandering about for some time, he became tired, hungry, and thirsty and couldn't find his way out of the forest. So he climbed a tall tree to see if he could catch a glimpse of the end of the forest. However, he saw nothing but the tops of trees. His only wish now was to fill his body once more, and he began climbing down the tree. When he got to the bottom, he noticed a table covered with many different dishes underneath the tree. He was delighted by this and ate until he was full. After he had finished eating, he took the tablecloth with him and moved on. Whenever he got hungry or thirsty again, he opened the tablecloth and whatever he wished for would appear on it. After a day's journey, he encountered a charcoal burner who was they're all alive, who was burning coals and cooking potatoes. The charcoal burner invited him to be his guest, and he replied, "No thanks, but I want you to be my guest." "How's that possible?" the charcoal burner asked. "You don't seem to be carrying anything with you." "That doesn't matter," he said. "Just sit down over here." Then he opened his tablecloth, and soon there was everything and anything one could possibly wish for. The charcoal burner enjoyed the meal and wanted to have the tablecloth. Well, of course, you don't want to be rude. I mean, that belongs to the knapsack. It's hard to keep up with which inanimate object it is. Some of you are probably going to say right now in the chat that mushrooms were involved with the telling of these stories. I'm not sure that that's entirely true. I think that these were well thought out, actually, as they were passed down through families. It shaped a culture, and that was the intention, to shape the culture and keep the culture. That's why they're hiding these fairy tales from plain sight. They're not making them available. They twist them and turn them into Disney stories, which are, not wholesome, really, never really have been. Not the way they should be. Okay, they had everything and anything, and he wanted the tablecloth. After they had eaten everything, he said, "How'd you like to trade with me? I'll give you an old soldier's knapsack." Oh, never mind, so this is not the knapsack talking. Maybe they're just 3 brothers and they're human. Good Lord, I don't know. You can't tell. You can't tell with these stories. All right, humans, okay. And they have the inanimate objects. We have literally had them where it was like a coffee bean and 2 other things, and they were the people in the story. So you just can't tell with these fairy tales. And that just tells you how foreign they are to us, that it's like, wait, what are you talking about? Because the stories we've been all told and shown are so very different than the stories we should have been listening to. Okay. How'd you like to trade with me? I'll give you an old soldier's knapsack for the tablecloth. I should have figured it out when the tablecloth was the topic. I'm so sorry, you guys. By Sunday, I have the ditzy brain. It annoys me. Sometimes my woman brain gets on my last nerve. He said, "How'd you like to trade with me?" If you tap it with your hand, a corporal and 6 men armed from top to bottom will come out each time you tap. They're of no help to me in the forest, but I'd certainly like the tablecloth. They made the trade. The charcoal burner kept the tablecloth, while the man from the Black Mountains took the knapsack. However, no sooner had the man gone some distance than he tapped the knapsack, and out popped the heroes. What does my master want? I want you to march back and fetch my tablecloth. March back and fetch my tablecloth that I left behind with the charcoal burner. Well, that's not okay. That's stealing and lying because you traded it. So they returned to the charcoal burner and then brought back the tablecloth. In the evening, he came to another charcoal burner who invited him to supper. He had the same potatoes without grease, but the man from the Black Mountains opened his tablecloth instead and invited him to be his guest. Nobody could have wished for a better meal. When it was over, this charcoal burner wanted to make a trade. He gave the man a hat for the tablecloth. If the man turned the hat on his head, cannons would fire as if an entire battalion of soldiers and battery were right on the spot. Well, goodness me. When the man from the Black Mountains had gone some distance, he tapped the old knapsack again, and the corporal and his 6 men were ordered to fetch the tablecloth again. Now the man continued his journey in the same forest, and in the evening he came upon a third charcoal burner, who invited him to eat potatoes without grease, like the others. Then they negotiated, and the charcoal burner gave the man a little horn for the tablecloth. If the man blew on it, all the cities and villages, as well as the fortresses, would collapse into heaps of rubble. Wow. This was long before so long before the idea of planes dropping bombs, so I hate to say that we're so used to the idea of cities, towns, whatever being reduced to rubble. We have such a war culture. The charcoal burner didn't get to keep the tablecloth any longer than the other 2, for the corporal and his 6 men soon came and fetched it. Now, when the man from the Black Mountains had everything together, he returned home and intended to visit his brothers, who had become rich from their gold and silver. When he went to them wearing an old tattered coat, they refused to recognize him as their brother. So he immediately tapped his knapsack and had 150 men march out and give his brothers a good thrashing on their backs. The entire village came to their aid, but they would do very little in this affair. News of this soon reached the king, who sent a military squad to take the soldiers prisoner. This is getting really interesting. This is unlike any we've read so far, I think, because I think they're showing that escalations, probably not a good thing. Probably, where is it going to lead? Where is that going to lead? The entire village came to their aid, right? News of this soon reached the king, who sent a military squad to take the soldiers prisoner. But the man from the Black Mountains kept tapping the knapsack and had an infantry and cavalry march out. They defeated the military squad and forced it to retreat. The following day, the king had even more soldiers sent to bring an end to the old guy. However, he kept tapping his knapsack until he had an entire army. In addition, he turned his hat a few times. The cannons fired and the enemy was defeated, and and soon took flight. Finally, peace was made, and he was appointed viceroy. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. Viceroy, that's like a governor, I think. And awarded the princess for his bride. However, the princess was constantly bothered by the fact that she had to take such an old guy for her husband. Her greatest wish was to get rid of him. Every day, she tried to discover the source of the power that he used to his advantage. Finally, since he was so devoted to her, he revealed everything to her. She managed to talk him into giving her his knapsack, whereupon she forced him out. Afterward, when soldiers came marching against him, his men were defeated. However, he still had the little hat. Oh gosh, this is not going well. So he turned it and had the cannons fired. Once again, he defeated the enemy and peace was made. After this, he was deceived again when the princess talked him into giving her his little hat. He just learned not to give her the knapsack, and then he gave her his little hat. You guys, this right here, we're almost at the end of this story, but like this right here, if you were reading this to your sons, you would be teaching them to be wise about who they trust, especially if she's female. He was so devoted to her, he gave her the knapsack. She deceived him to get it. She used it against him. And then he did the hat. That's the thing that fires the cannons. But she already has the knapsack. Oh, guys are doing this today. They're like, oh, no, she wouldn't do that. She would never do that. Yes, she would. Yes, she would. Okay, so after this, he was deceived again when the princess talked him into giving her his little hat. Now, when the enemy attacked him, he had nothing left but his little horn. So he blew it, and the villages, cities, and all the fortresses collapsed instantly into heaps of rubble. Then he alone was king and blew his horn until he died. Yeah, he was king of what? Nothing. Everything was gone. He did all that. He, was deceiving people and going along the way, and he made his fortune, and he defeated, which was very much the culture in that time. I'm going to conquer this little area. I'm going to conquer this little area. And he did all that, became king, took a bride, and she deceived him and destroyed everything. She deceived him after he achieved all of that, and nothing was left. You can't trust. This is like a lesson, like be really careful in trusting these, I'm trying to not use the word women. The robots are listening. But yeah, after all of that, after achieving all of that and gaining the whole kingdom and everything in it, the woman he married took it all away and destroyed everything in the process. Imagine if you, as a man, had been read that as a child. Then some of the things you see today would not shock you, or would not have shocked you as much. We wouldn't need the red pill movement. We wouldn't need any of this because men would already know. They would all know. And they would be we're not going to put up with it. You either shape up women, or, you know, it's sort of like the MGTOW thing. If you're not women, like, if you're going to just be this way and deceive us, and in the end take everything we have, including our children, then they would be, you know, they would start out that way, like many Gen Z men are right now, because they've seen it. They know what's out there. But they had to see it. They had to see men in their lives getting hurt. They had to be treated poorly by women. They had to be denied jobs they're qualified for and be overlooked for promotions, to see what's going on. If they'd been read stories like this when they're young, they would know to look for deception. They wouldn't believe that women are sugar and spice and all things nice. It's not true. I am not saying that innately we're bad. I'm not saying that. I'm saying we're behaving poorly, but we're not above being deceitful, manipulative. In fact, women tend to go that direction because we don't have physical strength. So our power lies in manipulation and seduction in some way, charming, using our sort of pretty privilege, because there's a simp everywhere, right? It wouldn't be if children had been read fairy tales, because this is where you learn the truth about the way the world works, about who people are, and that you should be wise about it. Thank you, guys. That was another great one. I don't know why the second fairy tale we read, strangely enough, is always the one, right? But I'm not trying to do that. I'm going in order, other than the one we just skipped. But the second one is always like, there it is, clear as day. Because there's red pill stuff in these fairy tales, man. It totally, the Grimm brothers were red pill. It's just how it is. Oh my gosh. I love you guys. I love Sundays. I love reading the fairy tales with you. It's going to be so fun talking about this in the chat. Make sure you feed your souls today. I recommend reading some fairy tales. And protect your peace. Okay? Nobody else is going to. And it's so important. I love you guys. And I'll see you on the next one. Okay? Bye.